Greetings everyone. In this video, we will be looking at Fedora 41 KDE Spin. A Fedora Spin is basically Fedora with another desktop, I guess is the best way to put it. Fedora is going to, if you do a straight Fedora install, you're going to end up with GNOME, which is the default desktop for Fedora. However, well, you can update that with like KDE or something else, but it's kind of a pain. So Fedora offers what they call a spin. So Fedora Spin is Fedora, in this case Fedora 41 with a different desktop. KDE, which we're going to be using here. It could be LXQT, XFCE, Cinnamon, whatever. And if you've watched my previous videos on Fedora, well, previous video, you'll know that this extends to their immutable distributions. Silverblue is a GNOME immutable distribution of Fedora, and Keenanite is a KDE immutable distribution of Fedora. Anyway, we're going to go ahead and, I'm going to go ahead and spin up Fedora in a virtual machine and give it a test drive and see what it's like. So I'm going to get to it. So as anybody who knows me will tell you, I'm not a big fan of Fedora or of GNOME. Both of them have too much of what I call the Windows do it or way attitude, which I'm not a real fan of. However, I was impressed enough with Keenanite to think about giving it a spin as a main distribution. So thinking about it, if I'm using a immutable distribution, I am doing things their way because you really don't have a lot of choice there. So the natural conclusion of this was maybe I should give Fedora a try, but it's not going to be default Fedora because, again, issues with GNOME. I've used GNOME in the past. I've used it for a couple of weeks, but I always find myself going back to something more familiar, more in line with my workflow. If I'm going to have a desktop, then it's going to be well, if I'm going to do a full-blown desktop, it's going to be KDE. It's not going to be GNOME. That's just works for me. Not saying GNOME's bad, but that's what works for me. Now, while I do believe that immutable distributions are going to be the wave of the future for the average user, they are not quite there yet. They have their problems. For example, with Keenanite, there's some issues with the NVIDIA drivers changing and not being in sync with the kernel in Keenanite. There's some problems with SDDM's themes and how they're presented, and the H.264 drivers, there's an issue with those too. All of these add up to me not using Keenanite. So again, since you're giving up control anyways with an immutable, I figured I will give Fedora 41 KDE Spin a try on my main computer for a couple of months to really get a feel for it. But first I'm going to spin it up in a virtual machine. Now, before we get too far ahead of ourselves, if you've watched any of my previous videos, you'll note that I've used VirtualBox in a lot of those. I'm actually not using VirtualBox here. I'm going to be using Vert Manager with libvirt and KVM. So if I remember at the end of this video, I'll talk a little bit about why that is, and you'll find the reason kind of amusing, I think. But yeah, if I remember, I'll get to that at the end of the video. But let's go ahead and move on from here. Okay, let's get started here. Let's first open the web browser and we'll search for Fedora KDE Spin. It should probably be one of the first few entries. Okay. So yeah, https://fedora project.org spins, and we'll go ahead and select the KDE Plasma desktop. All right. We're going to want to download the x86 64-bit version, not the ARM version. Fedora Media Player, some other stuff. Okay. And it's a couple of gigabytes in size, so we have to wait for it to download. Something to do while it's downloading is poke around on their website and see what there is to see. I'll actually speed through this so we don't have to wait for it. Oh. Okay, we've got the file. Good, now we can go ahead and set up our virtual machine. Let's close our web browser. And go ahead and open Vert Manager here. And we want to load a virtual or create a virtual, we want to create a virtual machine from a ISO file. So I've got several pools set up here. We've got the default pool, then I've got a pool for ISO files and a pool for my VMs that I create. I probably need to do a Vert Manager video and go over some of these terms. Anyways, I select my volume, which is my ISO for the Fedora I just downloaded. And you can auto name it, or I can name it you can auto select the Linux distribution, or you can do it yourself. I went ahead and did a Fedora 41. And we'll go to next. Here we can assign some actual memory and CPU cores. This is similar in many ways to VirtualBox, but this is Vert Manager. We'll give it 8 gigs and 4 CPU cores here. And then we're going to create our hard drive or storage drive. So many solid state drives out there now, it's kind of silly to keep saying hard drive. That sort of refers to a mechanical drive. Anyway, we're going to use the custom option here, and then we're going to our pool for my VMs, and we're going to create a 40 gigabyte drive there. And at that point, we could go ahead and do the install. You have on the last page here, you have a custom option. This will allow you to change things. This is going to probably be a default BIOS install. If you wanted to do a UEFI, you'd have to go into the custom options. And then we'll go ahead and fire up our virtual machine, and we'll load the live Fedora desktop. Once the desktop comes up, we have the welcome in the center. We'll actually go to a higher resolution full screen. Anyways, we have the welcome app in the center. We'll talk about that a little later. And we're just going to double click on the install app up here in the left top corner. And we'll start the installer. We'll pick our language and keyboard. Now we need to set things up. This is pretty similar to the Keynote installation we did earlier. So the first thing we need to do here is set up our storage drive. We've only got one. Again, same with the Keynote. I'm not sure why it just didn't select that one. Maybe they want to make sure you click on this. And we'll go with the auto install. And again, same as with the Keynote, we're going to create a root user. And then we're going to create a regular user. And now that we've got everything, all the options met, we can go ahead and click on the install. This will take a few minutes, so we just wait. And once we're done, we will go ahead and reboot. Upon reboot, we'll enter the SDDM display manager or login program, whatever you want to call it. We go ahead and type our username and password to log in. We've gone to full screen mode 2 here, so. And our display looks pretty much the same as before, except we've lost the install icon and we've just got the welcome app. It's a good thing if you've never used Fedora to actually go through this welcome app. There's some stuff you can do and set up there, so we'll click through it fairly quickly. We've got some general information stuff here. We've got some of the applications available in KDE Plasma. They talk a little bit about the Discover software app. And here is the telemetry section. Currently, unlike some other programs, telemetry is off by default, and there's nothing here that's really too terribly wacky. But again, Fedora is joined at the hip to Red Hat, so I keep an eye on this section to see what sort of telemetry I have. It's just maybe a year from now, 2 years from now, I don't know. I would hope not, but I would suspect that at some point it becomes non-optional, or it's a log out, or what is it? It's a opt-out option instead of an opt-in option. But we'll see how that progresses. We're going to opt out, though. And here you want to stop on this page and enable third-party repositories. This will add FlatHub, along with a couple others for non-free drivers. And we're going to need to do a password because this is going to modify some system files to add these repositories. And you can see here we've actually got some updates that need to be installed. It's a little different than Debian or Arch, where they basically install the latest version. Fedora was installed from the ISO, and then they're going to update. So let's go ahead and update. Whilst downloading the updates, we can poke around a little bit, see the different categories and things here in the Discover Software Manager. At some point, though, we're going to need to do a restart to actually install these updates. That's sort of another different thing. It's going to depend on the updates here to whether we need to do a restart or not. I haven't played around with Fedora to know enough if it'll not restart on simple updates, but let's see what happens here when we restart and we're installing all the updates. And then we reboot. And we'll log back in. And oh, look at that. Well, that would definitely require a restart. They've updated the desktop. So, yeah. Again, I'm going to have to try a smaller update at some point and see if it still demands a restart. But, yeah, this one, I kind of think they needed to do a restart because they went to Plasma 6.3. Okay. Let's poke around here and see what sort of apps are installed. There's some bloat, not a lot of bloat here. Maybe bloat's the wrong term. There's a lot of KDE apps I would not personally install or use. For example, Contact. And the way they installed LibreOffice is not one I would have chosen. They just installed several components. Well, I can sort of see that. Some components you don't use that much. But yeah, we're going to remove some things. There's also some stuff here it's not a lot of space, so you can't call it super bloat, but it's going to be some apps here I'm just not going to use and I'm going to remove. So we'll take a few minutes in the Software Center and we'll remove a lot of these apps. And you can see things here like you can see the individual components installed for LibreOffice. That's like I say, some general other stuff I'm probably not going to use. I'm going to remove contact, and you can see this is going to delete all the dependencies, which is hopefully going to remove pretty much all of that stuff. I actually use Thunderbirds for my email, contacts, calendar, tasks, things like that. I've used Contact a few times in the past. It's gotten better over the years. I still prefer Thunderbird though. Some other things to remove. Various LibreOffice components installed individually. And you'll notice here, however, that LibreOffice Math didn't uninstall, and there was no way to uninstall from the Discover Software Center, so I'm going to have to hit the terminal. I was hoping to avoid the terminal on this as much as possible, but yeah, that's not going to happen. So let's do a list. Yeah, using DNF. Yeah, it's a big list. Let's do how I would have done it back in the RPM days. There we go. So we can uninstall the rest of LibreOffice with DNF now that we know file name. We'll need root permission. And that's pretty clean. There's still some stuff I'm probably going to remove later that I'm not going to use, but we'll see how it goes. I got to investigate some of this stuff as well. Okay, back to the Discover Software Manager. Let's go ahead and add some software. Things like VLC, GIMP, we'll add the LibreOffice package. Some interesting things to note here. I guess some warnings with some of the FlatHub repository Flatpaks, but I'm going to continue to use those. As opposed to the Fedora Flatpaks or the Fedora packages. Anyway, we'll continue to play around with this, see where things go. At some point, I'm going to have to render some basic opinions. Like I said, I'm going to take this on a test drive for a couple of days, try a bunch of different stuff, and we're going to see how things work out. So once I do that, I'll go ahead and do a conclusion for this. But yeah, so far so good, I guess. Okay, I've been using Fedora 41 KDE Spin for a while now, long enough to develop some thoughts, opinions, and comments. So interesting package management detail in the Discover package manager, which is the KDE version. I found that a lot of the Flatpaks are listed as outdated, even though they're a much higher version than either the Fedora package or the Fedora FlatHub package. Yeah, I found that kind of interesting. Not sure why that is, other than the Fedora packages tend to be the latest stable release, whereas FlatHub tends to be the latest release, stable or otherwise. Another observation, if you're planning on gaming on Fedora, you're going to want to install Xorg alongside of Wayland, which is installed by default. I found some games will not run properly under Wayland, but they will run fine under Xorg. So yeah, you're going to need them both, and you're going to have to know how to switch between them, which you'll do through the display manager when you log in. But that's subject for another time. Just yeah, if you're going to game, you're going to need both Wayland and Xorg. And it's not just gaming either. Some other applications, for example, VLC, I found had issues with some videos under Wayland, but would play fine under Xorg, and vice versa there. It would have problems with certain videos under Xorg that would play fine under Wayland. Yes, that was kind of an interesting observation. So my basic overall observation with Fedora, it's an okay distribution as long as you're not looking under the hood and you're willing to do things the way they want you to do them. Again, that's probably reasonable for 80% of the users out there, but if you're somebody who wants to do things in a specific way, wants to tinker around under the hood, you might not find Fedora quite up there with some of the other distributions out there. But if you're just using it for writing letters, emails, browsing the web, it's fine. It's easy to install, although, yeah, I do find their installer, at least the first time through, a bit confusing, but it's not hard. Easy to figure out at some point. So is Fedora good for new users? That's a resounding maybe. I mean, after all, it's not Debian or Mint, but yeah, it's usable. And as I'm saying, if you're just, as I said, if you're just browsing the web, looking at emails, doing some simple documents, Wayland Xorg isn't going to matter. One or the other will work. You get in some more complicated graphics applications, you're probably going to have both of them installed, and you may have to switch between them occasionally. Recommendation I will make, I had some trouble with the Fedora OSB Flatpak. I would recommend going with the Flatpaks instead of the Fedora ones. I'm told the Fedora ones are compiled for Fedora, but I do use OSB Studio, and it didn't work properly in the Fedora Flatpak, but it was no problem with the Flatpak. Speaking of FlatHub, yeah, you got to be careful downloading things from there. I would actually go to your app's website and see if they have a Flatpak, and then get to it that way rather than just downloading something from FlatHub. FlatHub, pretty much anybody can upload anything, so yeah, you want to be careful downloading stuff from FlatHub. Make sure it's the official Flatpak version that the application's designers made. So one final thing before I close this video. Again, over the years, my opinion of Fedora has always been jaded, but it's been interesting running it, and I think I'm going to put it on as a main driver on my laptop, and I'm going to run it for a while, at least a couple of months, just to give it a fair shot. I mean, it does most of the things I want. It's just, when I get around to tinkering around under the hood, that's not something I got to keep that's something I got to keep myself from doing with Fedora. You don't want to do too much tinkering under the hood. You can break things. It's not, like I said, it's not Debian. But yeah, I'm going to give it a try. The packages are more up to date. Well, we'll see how the stability goes. Again, I'm coming from Arch, so I'm used to packages sometimes breaking during upgrades. The majority of the system software, I'll be using the Fedora repositories. For most applications, though, I'm probably going to go with FlatHub and Flatpaks. Not the Fedora Flatpaks, just the application designer's Flatpak. Oh yes, PSS. PS. I'm not using VirtualBox, mainly because I didn't realize how difficult it was to install VirtualBox on Fedora, and it's not as straightforward as you would hope. Vert Manager was easy to install and get running, though, so that's why I'm going to be using it. Vert Manager is something I wanted to get a little more experience with anyway, so yeah, that's a good thing. So, final opinion at this point, and like I say, it may change in the next couple of months when I use it as a main driver. For new users, as long as you're not tinkering under the hood and you're willing to do things the way Fedora wants you to do them, yeah, it'll work. It's good. If you're a tinkerer, though, I have some reservations about Fedora for those who like to tinker and like to do things their way. One of my favorite examples, if you're using an EFI boot and you need an EFI system partition, and Fedora wants it to be 600, even though it's like, I don't know, I have to go back and look, but like 5 or 10% filled. Why does it need to be 600? Why can't it be smaller? I don't know. That's what Fedora wants. So again, Fedora has, in my opinion, do it our way sort of mentality about some things, but we'll see how it goes when I load it up as my main driver and force myself to use it for a month. And I don't know, I may or may not do a video then, but we'll see how it goes.